We're pleased to have with us John Sacerdote, Show Director for the Amherst Railway Society's Railroad Hobby Show, who will give us a behind-the-scenes look at what goes into preparing a show throughout the year and on the weekend of the show. John is a lifelong model railroader, as we can see from his background, less than a 4-year sabbatical while away at college. He was born in Hartford, Connecticut, and spent almost all his summers in Maine, which explains a lot about why his model railroad is called the Berlin, Bangor, and Maine. John thinks of the BB&M as a southern division of the Bangor and Aroostook Railroad. His primary railroad interests are the Maine Central, the BAR, Maine Narrow Gauge, and visiting model railroads and asking about 200 times, how did you do that? He attended college in Maine at UMaine in Orono and Ohio at Dayton, returning to his Connecticut roots in 1978 after teaching and coaching for a few years in the Midwest. John is supposedly retired from a long computer-related career. He's been the show director of the Amherst Railway Society's Railroad Hobby Show for 17 years, after 5 years as clinic coordinator and then assistant show director. He's married, amazingly, for somebody who has so many other involvements with railroads, and has 1 son and 2 grandchildren. So, John, pull back the curtain and tell us what goes into putting on this show.
Absolutely, Dave. Thank you so much for having me here. And let me share my screen with you guys. Give me 2 seconds to call it up and start from the beginning. A little PowerPoint I put together for you guys. So it's an interesting year, and it seems to never end. As you'll see, I try to take February off, but it doesn't often work out that well. But I wanted to start here just to say thanks to you guys and list the actual name of the show. And we've had a lot of fun with that. If you guys know Lionel Strang and those guys and his crew and a podcast, one year they went around asking everybody what the name of the show was, and nobody really knew. And it was The Big Show. And, you know, because years ago under Bob Buck, the only other show director, it was the Big Railroad Show or Hobby Show. And we wanted to get rid of the big because it kind of conflicted with the Big E. And so the actual name of the show is the Amherst Railway Society's Railroad Hobby Show. It's a mouthful. And when I was asked that of Channel 22 on a live spot, I couldn't get the words out. And the guy who was interviewing me said, well, that's about all the time we have, after a couple of times struggling to get the word out. And I just burst out laughing. And for the next 20 seconds, all we were doing is fooling around on live television. I finally did get the name out. And he went on to ask me a few other questions, but it was, we got in the giggle mode. So it was kind of pretty funny. But the actual name of the show is the Amherst Railway Society's Railroad Hobby Show. So, before we start, just a little background. It actually is the largest show in North America in size, in that we take over 350,000 square feet. In attendance, we've had many more on occasion than anybody else. Not consistently, though. It varies from year to year. And basically, when I hear from exhibitors, it's the largest dollar-making money show in the country. So that's kind of nice. I could back that up with stories of the 8 ATM machines that are there. They're single tray ATMs, and each of a single tray holds 60 grand. 2 of them are double trays, so they hold 120. They fill them up during the week. They fill them up again on Saturday evening. So you're talking probably $500,000 over the weekend in cash, just from the ATM machines, to give you an idea. So it's really interesting, and we always have to remind the bank folks to make sure you come back on Saturday evening. Otherwise, they run out about midday on Sunday. So it's interesting. So as I had alluded to earlier, I try to take February off, but I really don't, because there's a lot of follow-up and a lot of things. So this is basically and mostly a full-time job, and I mean a full-time job. Thankfully, I've been retired for a while. I just used to struggle when I first started doing this, when I still was consulting and doing some internet web-based training. But just so you know, this is a paid position. And it really is not huge, and it's not a salary by any means. It's enough to cover expenses almost. you know, when I'm running around and stuff and I have to go get stuff, I just grab it. I sometimes often forget to put in the expense, the receipts and stuff, but I guess I kind of break even and I'm happy with that. So, and this is, as David said, my 17th year. I am, as I said earlier, the second show director. However, we're starting a search. I am actually 71 in 2 weeks, and I need to finish my railroad if it's at all possible. So I'd like to break in an assistant because I would really love to say, okay, by the time I'm 75, I'm done with this, because it really does take up so much of my time. I've been trying to erect this bridge, this lift bridge on my railroad just outside of Oakland on the way to Waterville for a year. And I've got the bridge built finally. I bought it from one of our vendors 7 years ago and sat in a box for that long. So it's really difficult. I feel much like I'm the cobbler's kids, right? I do everything on everybody else's railroad except my own. But I'm not complaining because I really enjoy the way things work out right now, with the show taking up a lot of my time. But I'll tell you, from now until the show, this truly becomes my favorite time of the year. So we've barely started that search. I just put the word out to a few people that, hey, if you know anybody that might be interested, that kind of thing. So let's start the season, so to speak, our annual season, just after the show takes place. Okay, so the show just ended. It's Monday morning, and I'll come full circle and you'll see. But on Wednesday night, because all our meetings tend to be on Wednesday, so the Wednesday following the show at our headquarters, we have a hits and misses meeting. What went well? What didn't go so well? You know, what kind of problems did we have, regardless of what they were? Exhibitors, patrons that come to the show, the Big E folks, although they treat us so well, it's actually amazing, and whomever. So we have to cater this event because food is very important to our volunteers. They're always hungry. So we have, you know, just a few things. The last year we did this in 2020, we had pie and ice cream. So we let them know because it was at 7 o'clock that it was dessert, but I surprised them with pie and ice cream, and every bit of it was gone. There's probably 30 people at the meeting, all the floor managers, including myself, of which there are 25 to 30 throughout the weekend in 4-hour shifts, trying to have 3 in each building at all times. And then we also get reports from emergency EMS folks. We have to keep 2 ambulance staff folks with ambulances on staff because during the show, the population of the area demands that we have 2 ambulances. I mean, the population of West Springfield doubles for the weekend. So interesting stuff. And then we also get reports from Eastern states. How did it go in their eyes? Did we break anything? You know, what could we do better? Bus parking was in the wrong place last time. So it was difficult for the buses to pull in and out of the area. You know, just silly things like that, but it really takes up your time. So this is all documented and entered into the database for the following year. Well, I've been waiting for 2 years to start calling this stuff up, and I have been. Along with this, we update the website with the attendance figures. People want to know. The day after the show, they want to know how many people were there. And I hear from a lot of the exhibitors afterwards and that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what happens. And then we try to just rest the rest of February, because honestly, I am like dead on my feet. So it really has exhausted me by the time. I'm not complaining though. All right, so March and April, during those 2 months, it starts again. And we have 30 plus hotels, including the premier hotels that are on our website and the accommodations in the area, all new contracts. We negotiate new rates, and we've got the time of the year on our side. You know, these hotels are dying in the middle of the winter, especially the end of January, early February. So we historically get fantastic rates, really a fraction of what they would be if we tried to hold the show in the spring and summer. And we've actually looked at that as early as last year. Should we have the show at a time when we could be a little bit more outdoors? and the rates of the hotel skyrocket, and the exhibitors love having this part of the year as the kickoff to all the shows. There is a lot of product release at this show, so it's very interesting. And so we've decided we don't think we want to change it. We do, however, have problems with the pain in the butt Super Bowl, especially when, well, not so much anymore, New England is in it, but they got us again this year. Several years ago, when they extended the time between the championship games and the Super Bowl to 2 weeks, we already had the show scheduled. So believe it or not, our show fell on Super Bowl Sunday, the Sunday day of the 2-day show. And our attendance went from 9,000 on average to 4,000 that year. And we couldn't compete with the Super Bowl. So we tried to stay away. And using those 2 weeks, we put our show on the weekend in between the AFC, NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. It's the Pro Bowl, but no one watches the Pro Bowl that much. So it didn't seem to affect them. This year, they extended the season. They shortened preseason, and I thought, okay, we're going to be fine because they're extending the season a week, but they extended it 2 weeks. So now the show Sunday is falling on the NFC, AFC Championship games. I tried to change it, but the Big E is booked every weekend for the next 3 years, and that includes us. So I think at the 2024 show date, I could get us back to the week in between, but that puts us a week into February. So we're still debating. I'll talk to a lot of the exhibitors, see what they think. So it's a lot of the things you have to think of, but we're booked until 2024. Okay. And the other thing I look at, and I get this from the reports, from the floor managers, et cetera, is the dreaded DNIB. And that stands for do not invite back. Every once in a while, we have exhibitors that give us problems. And I think we're in pretty good shape now. I really haven't had any DNIBs in a while. But every once in a while, we get a couple of crazy stories. One year, I had a layout where the guy was in my face, huge, and he was on the cover of Model Railroader. He had this attitude, it was one of those seashore 4x8 layouts. And he wanted to set up with viewing areas on all 4 sides. Well, I had put him at a cap aisle so he could be on all 3 sides. That wasn't good enough. So he started moving tables. And, we have very strict fire marshal standards where they will not give us a CO until he checks out all the aisles and stuff. So this guy moved him after the CO. And I said, you really can't do that. And it got to the point where, and I won't curse on the air, but he called me an a-hole. He says, you're just an a-hole. And I said, you know what? You've got 2 choices right now. Pack up or walk down to my office and catch your breath and start over again. Otherwise, pack up. And no one ever gets me to that point, guys, but this guy got me. And I hate to lose my temper, but I did. I didn't raise my voice or anything, but I did. So I walked out of the office, never turned back. And about 2 minutes later, there he was. I'm sorry, I've had a sore back. And I said, listen, I'm willing to start over again if you are. I said, but I can't do that during the show. I can make some room after the first day. And that's what he agreed to. So I've got crazy stories like that. So, and I did invite him back next year, but I guess, I don't know. I don't remember why. It's certainly in the database and I can look it up, but he did not come back the following year. So this year, I'm happy to say there's no DNIBs. So that's cool. And so what we do is we update the database. I've got this great database, which I'll show you a screenshot of later, that goes back every year I've been doing this. So I've got 17 years of history about what's happening. And I'll give you a couple anecdotes about that. But we'll add a new field like, hey, if you're going to donate product, I need a new field. Is this guy donated in the past? Yes or no? What did he donate? Those kinds of things. So I have a very flexible database that allows us to keep track of everything. We also have to print the flyers for the following year's show in March and April. We print a few for the show, but they're very generic based on last year with just a date change. And then we start producing the flyers for the next year, because all of our exhibitors want them, especially folks like Ron's books. They put them in everything they send out in that kind of thing. So we try to get them done in March and April. So moving forward to May and June, we start reviewing our advertising budget. It's at the same time where the Amherst Railway Society actually builds their budget for the year. Anyways, our fiscal year is from July 1st on. So we'll incorporate the building of the show budget, which is 90% of the budget anyway, with the Amherst Railway Society budget. Well, we'll start to do our advertising budget to see what's going on. And we start to do new exhibitor research. I'm really keen on new exhibitors that have something to offer. It's not a wait list, guys. It's not a wait list of time. And as you'll see, it's a matter of who's got stuff that's really of interest, like 3D printing, new electronics, all that kind of stuff. That gets you in the show instantly. But those folks that have waited for a long time, that comes into play as well. I have 225 exhibitors waiting to get into this show, some for over 7 years. I early in my tenure made the mistake of calling saying, why hasn't Bill called me back? And with that kind of an attitude. And he goes, oh, and the spouse would say, oh, John, he passed away about 3 months ago. And I said, could you hold on a minute while I take my shoe out of my mouth, please? And I've made those kinds of mistakes. I don't anymore, guys, but I always am very cautious to see, because I'll tell you, I don't like spouting this kind of statistic, but every single year for 17 years, I've had 1 or 2 folks pass away between last show and this show. It'll probably be 3 or 4 this year. A bunch of volunteers as well. And it breaks my heart because we all live for this time of the year. So it's interesting. But on a nicer note, we get 10 or so, 15 new people on the wait list every single year. So it's interesting. And we get some people that drop off, but I do try to say, hey, do you want to still be on the wait list? And most of them still do. It's interesting. So we also start sending emails out to existing exhibitors. I update them once a month, especially during the pandemic years. Last year, this year, I send out an email every single month. Here's what's going on. Here's who's coming to the show this year. Everything looks good. And by the way, everything does look good. Right now, we're 100% go. Okay, we may have that mask mandate, but it's still 4.5 months off. So we'll wait to see. And gosh, I'm all over it, talking with the fire marshal, the health department, the folks at the Big E every other week. I'll give them a break because it's during their show right now. But it's that kind of thing. So we want to see who's still around, that kind of thing. I could let you in on one new secret. The folks at Modelbahn, Germany, the makers of Rocco and Fleischmann, sent an email saying we will do most anything to be in the show. So we're really upgrading internationally. So they are invited to the show, along with 2 exhibitors, Hattons and a couple other folks from the UK, 1 from Australia, over a dozen from Canada. So already we've got people coming from a lot of different places, but it's spreading. And I like seeing that. So we stick it out and see who's around, who's retired, and a few people retire every year, not counting dying, which I don't mean to make fun of. But then we'll start our contract production from the database. It automatically will make a copy of everybody that was at last year's show when we tell it to do that thing. Okay, it depends on their status. So our database looks like this. We've got a company record, and it tells us all about the company, the address, et cetera, how many tables they originally requested, how much lead time they need to be in the show, when did they first get on the wait list. And in that database, it tells me how many contracts they've signed, guys. And I have copies of every single contract going back every single year, which includes down here what building they were in, what section, how many tables they had, how much did they pay, when did they pay, how did they pay. So when someone says to me, well, John, I used to have 5 tables about 7 years ago. I said, no, you didn't. You had 3 at most, and you were in the young building, and you were in section 418, and I moved you over to here, and now you want to be here. You never had 5 tables. And they go, And it's just kind of funny. And I'll even share my screen and say, look, here's the stuff. So when you go into each contract, all the notes, every time I send them an email, every time I talk to them, is in the contract for that year. So I am watching you and I know everything that's going on. But honestly, I don't do that for the wrong reasons, guys. I do it to keep my life sane, because I'll actually change the status of a contract. And I'll say, okay, status is now active open item, which means they need an extra table, or they want to move next to Fred, or they want to do this. And so I'll look down through the list of all the open contracts that are active open, or they paid and it's still open because I owe them extra carpet or something like that. So without this database, we would be seriously lost. So if it's not this database, it would be some other database, but this is an integral part of what we do. We also use it for our membership database. So we know when memberships are going to expire, we send out reminder emails, et cetera, and all that kind of stuff. So the database is where I live daily. I'm in it 4 or 5 hours a day. Okay. So now it's July, August.
John,
yes.
Right. What database program are you using?
I'm actually using a reconditioned, it's new. The company's still out there. The company's name is Bullhorn. They've written software for the employment agency industry. That's my background. I wrote my own software and had a company for 20 plus years that wrote software for employment agencies to match jobs against candidates. And it not only did it match based on their skills, but it also tracked them through the entire interview process from the moment the resume was sent to the hiring official. What do they think of it? Let's get them in for an interview. Let's get them in for a second interview to meet the vice president, to make it all happy. And then the actual offer, the letter, et cetera, right to the placement, and then the fees that were involved and everything. So I was able to adapt this. They still have a company database. They still have contacts at that company, and the contracts were the job orders. So every time there was a job opening, I changed the fields around. So it's now a contract instead of a job order that a company would give someone for a job opening that they have. So if you want to hear more about that, Bullhorn is international. And I used to compete against them in the old days. Now I help train when they have overflow people. They have 1,200 employees worldwide, and they've got offices all over the United States and the world for that matter. So that's the database. And honestly, could you do it with it's web-based, of course, so I can access it from anywhere, including the show, especially the show. So I would never get anything these days that isn't web-based, because you don't have to worry about, oh, I bought the wrong computer. It's not on my computer. It's out in the cloud, which means the cloud, guys, just means somebody else is hosting it and they give you access to that server. That's all the cloud is. It's just saving stuff on somebody else's computer other than yours. Okay. So July, August, we actually send the last week in July. This year they went out August 2nd, which is right within our time frame. We sent out all the new contracts for the upcoming show, 500 contracts. And we've already gotten, honestly, I'm not even sure. We've gotten probably 100 back with payment already. There's an incentive and a real funny story. Years ago, when I first started, there was a deadline, and it says, here's your contract. Here's how much your table price is. And if you don't pay by now, we're going to tack on an extra $50. And people would send it in after that deadline with the original price. I said, so here's what we'll do. Same deadline, but if you pay by that deadline, early bird discount. And people started paying earlier just because we reworded the incentive slightly differently. So interesting stuff. So if you pay by this year, September 24th, maybe right around there, you get to take 10% off your table prices if you're an exhibitor who sells. Nonprofits, layouts, they're all free. So we really just make money off of the tables where people themselves are selling. And the only other way we make money, by the way, guys, is from the gate. So we get our money for the whole year, 95% of our money from the whole year, from the gate, from the tables, the table rental for those. And we'll talk about expenses in a bit. So we email to the existing folks, the contracts from the year before. I send contracts to the new folks. And then I start with advertising, especially with magazines. Model Railroad has a deadline for the January issue, which comes out, about a month before. It comes out, the mid-December, as most of you know. But their deadline is next week. So I have to pay attention to the early deadlines, and not so much with radio, TV, cable, because you could actually work right up until 2 weeks before, and they'll still get stuff on the air. So, but it's the magazines, it's the print. I don't do much print anymore. It's just Craftsman and Model Railroader. That's it. That's where people pay attention, because we do everything now, guys. Social networking, we post the dates on everything. It's on our own calendar. It's in our own group, that kind of thing. And then I have to contact, and I've done all of this already, the show support companies. Okay, Eastern States people. I've already got our pre-convention meeting set up for the first Friday in January. But I have to contact the tent folks, the table folks. We get 1,200 tables. So one of our table companies farms it out to another table company because nobody has 1,200 tables. We have to talk to the restaurants. I have to talk to the golf cart people, radios, the police, the fire marshal, everybody I've got to talk to. So all kinds of stuff to consider, guys. The radios for floor managers, for the money counters, that kind of thing. So we start collecting contracts September, October. People miss the first deadline. They say, "Oh, I forgot. Can I get it in?" I said, "No, you missed." And we're really kind of hard-nosed about it, because we need to show them that it needs to be in. The contracts need to be in, guys, so I know who the heck's coming to the show, so I know how to juggle the space. So contracts have to be in, but I never end call. I'm going to call Bachman. I'm going to call Scale Trains. I'm going to call some of the huge manufacturers and say, "Hey, are you coming or not?" "Oh, of course we are." I said, "Well, when are you going to tell me this?" So I guess I'm teaching them that it's okay, but I go through it every year. But I get to check in with a lot of these guys, and I know a lot of these guys now, so it's kind of fun anyway. So, but I continue to email. Monthly updates continue. Okay. Advertising contracts continue to be signed, especially with the early deadlines. And then by the end of October, I start our map planning. It's all on CAD. It's laser shot. So we brought lasers into each of the 4 buildings, the BLC, the big one. Then we went to the Young building and the Stroh building, the Mallory North, which is that short one, and then the Mallory Complex, which is the back of the Mallory. We shot with lasers every single one of those buildings. We are accurate to within 2 to 3 inches in 350,000 square feet, to the point where the Big E folks want copies of our CAD building maps, and we've given them, of course. I mean, our maps were more accurate than theirs. And if you look, this is what we generally publish. And, it just shows the space, and we try to have some of the names on them and all that kind of stuff. But if you've ever done CAD, guys, these maps are in layers. So here's what it looks like when all the layers are present. So we've got layers of just the building where all the poles are, layers where the concrete expansion joints are located, because it's so well laid out in the Better Living Center that we can measure off of those. Now, if you look over in where you see the Etter lid, that is actually what we produce up close with the dimensions for the aisles, to remind people that we've got to keep aisle space. This is not a big secret anymore, so I don't mind telling you. The aisle space required by the fire marshal in West Springfield, because of the density of our show, which is the most dense show of all the shows, including the Big E. We have more people per 10-foot square than any show. So our fire law aisles are 10 feet. We use 12 feet because we just have to. There's that many people on a crazy Saturday. And the fire marshal is actually just ecstatic about it. Now, when we converted that, one of my first years, we lost about 30 tables. That's a lot of revenue. But we made it up when we went to other buildings and all that kind of stuff, knowing we were going to do that. So this has all the dimensions for the surveyors. So, I mean, it's unreadable. Now, we don't show them all the dimensions. They want to know just the dimensions from all the expansion joints with the poles in place, and they need to know where the layouts are. So the first thing we do is actually go in and survey the building, and you'll see when we do that with layouts, because layouts come in first. So we need to have those done and ready. So it takes 3 or 4 tries to get it right, because people move around. I don't know if they're coming until later. They want to move to another space. Someone is sick, they're not coming. Someone broke their hip, they're not coming. So we'll try to move things around. This year, I have to get it done prior to the first weekend in December, because the deadline for our show booklet is a little bit earlier, about 2 weeks earlier. So the last probably week in November, because our booklet is going to be at the Staple in Railroad Model Craftsman. So we're doing the entire show booklet inside Railroad Model Craftsman this year. So interesting stuff. So the map becomes truly accurate. So I'll do the best I can. I'll tell people, listen, we're going to print on this date. If you don't know what's going on, you're not going to be in the map or in the brochure that's part of Craftsman this year. So it's an accurate map, and it goes to the fire department, the health department, because I have to put where the exits are and which ways, if it's one-way aisles, all that kind of stuff. It goes to the Eastern States people, because they need to know where to set up the bleachers for our clinics, et cetera. It's published on the website. And as I had stated, our map is much more accurate. Not so much anymore, because they have our maps, but before they had maps that we used and would go, well, wait a minute. When did the storage center get here? When did you put that Dunkin' Donuts in? We have tables there. So it's that kind of stuff. So we go up. I go up every summer. I've already been, and we walk through, what have you done differently? Now this year in the Stroh building, they made a ton of storage. So one whole row is wiped out. So I have to react to those things. So it's a lot of craziness, a lot of detail. So now November, December, guys, all the contracts, and it's still never ending calling. But by the end of December, by the end of November, midway through December, I've got a great idea who's coming. I still update. Okay. The show map is just completed and posted. It might go through one more iteration, but I usually don't by the end of December. And then advertising full bore has begun, as we have a very large advertising budget that's being rearranged this year and going mostly social network. And then I sit there and I go, okay, what am I missing? What am I missing? I know I'm missing something. And I usually don't anymore, because I have this master to-do list that's 5 pages. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's 5. I don't know how many cells it is. It's like 400 cells of things that have to happen, and whose job it is, when they were done for that year. And it gets to the point where it gets close. Yeah, when it's early, I'll cross these things out, electronically, but then I'll print it and I'll just put X's through it, because it's too much of a pain. So I'll go back but I mean, we have to contact the Boy Scouts, because we have a troop that comes in and we donate some money to them, but they put all the numbers and letters on all the tables and set chairs up on all of the tables. And it's fun working with them, because I've known Bob, the troop organizer, for probably 20 years. And it's fun to see all these kids grow up and all that kind of stuff. So there's some fun involved in a lot of this too. And goes without saying, we've got 30 clinics already arranged and scheduled for Thursday and Friday, with people already paid without even knowing what the clinics are. They just love coming to these clinics. Every year we have 6 or 7 people come from Sweden to the clinics, and they make a whole week out of it. So it's great. And we've got 30 clinics this year that are really, we try to do better every year. This year I could say, wow, I've got some great clinics from a lot of people. We'll have a lot of that's posted, but I just got the schedule of when they're going to give the clinics on Thursday and Friday. And we're doing a lot of doubles, because some of them are in such demand. People don't want to miss them. So we're going to show them more than once. So lots of stuff in this master to-do list. And even calling for the radios. And I've got a guy who's a floor manager, a member of the Amherst Railway Society, and he owns the radio company. And so we get all our walkie-talkies at a discount. I still have to pay, but it kind of frosts me a little bit, but I hope he's not listening. I've got a funny radio story for you. We have money counters, which I don't like mentioning at all. If you think about it, there's 5 ticket booths. And on Saturday in the morning, it used to be all cash. We didn't take credit cards. Now it's about 50-50, thankfully, because we can take credit cards thanks to the electronics that the Big E has set into they have fiber in the ground now. So we could do credit card machines at the ticket booths. So that discounts a lot of the cash. It's not so much cash. But can you imagine about every 20 to 30 minutes, we'd go to a ticket booth and pick up 10 grand in 10s and 20s. So we had radios for the money counters and the money retrievers as well. And the money counting, we move the office every year just because we're trying to be prudent. But one year we had a ticket booth person who has to be the Big E folks. And we have no problem with that because they know how to use those machines, etc. But she's on the air one year saying, I haven't had a person here in about 30 minutes and I've got $15,000 that I need to have picked up. This went out over all the walkie-talkies. And a lot of the floor managers have their walkie-talkies on so you could hear what's going on. So needless to say, we switched to channel B for the money counters. And those are some of the funny stories. And in this past year, I had one of the floor managers happen to spot the armored car that comes on Saturday evening. And he announced, and I said, you ever open your mouth about money again, and I will fillet you. He said, attention, the armored car is arriving. So it's just silly things like that, guys. I mean, I just go, did I really just hear that? So it's you take a step back and we go in pairs. There's people that are guards. So it's just those funny stories that make, when you look back at the time, I don't think I was all that pleased, however. So now it's the week of the show. Okay. So Monday I'm up at the Big E because I have to bring the signs that hang, the banners that go on the outside of the building. And they do all that Monday. Tuesday, I come back to my house and I have a lot of the exhibitors send things to my house. So I have literally a truckload of shipments, not huge stuff, because I have made arrangements for big shipments to come to the Big E, and we've worked that out quite nicely. But the guys that don't know, they don't want to pay a drayage company, I said, ship it to me. I'll bring it up there. I'll put it right at your booth. So I like doing stuff like that. It's a lot of extra detail, but that's the kind of backing I like providing at the show. It makes the show a little bit different than when you go to a union hall and they don't want to know. And nothing against the union, but they're tougher and more strict. I like to be able to do a few things extra that help our exhibitors. So it'll allow us to do that. So Wednesday, here we go. I stay up there from Wednesday till Sunday night. Okay, so I'm up there for pretty much most of the week. And we have, if you've ever been across the street, guys, there's that great breakfast and lunch place, Memos. We own that place for that week. We have an account there. We open an account there. All our volunteers at the meetings, the floor managers meet for breakfast. We have our early morning meetings, and all we have to do is leave the wait staff tips. We cover everything else. So we have our first breakfast meeting at 8, because during the show it's at 6. Even before they open early for us. And then we open the building by 10. So the survey crews, this is on Wednesday now. With the number of buildings we have, we used to set up in one day. Now it takes 3 days to set up. So we survey all the buildings. We have to insulate the Mallory building because those half doors for the cows to stick their heads out and the alpacas and all of that, and the horses, they don't close tight. And we have to pay the heat. We have to pay the electricity. I mean, they read the meters when our time starts. So we try to be prudent about that. So we insulate the building, and I have a crew that does that. The tent people are already there to put the tents between the two buildings, leaving room for the fire law. So we have to measure all of that. The tables are on site, 1,200 tables, guys. 1,200 tables at $10 a table. 1,500 chairs at $2 a table. So there's $15,000 just for that. Okay. The tents are another 15. I mean, it goes on and on. and on. So our expenses are six figures, guys. That includes everything. But we make, and now you'll see how much we make. So with placement of the tables and just behind the surveying crew, I have to drop hard-coded lines for virtual railfan because they're going to this year stream all 4 buildings live. Oh, news alert. The Union Station in Springfield camera is live as of yesterday at 3:00. So it's live, it's open. So we were instrumental in working with virtual railfan. That was the #1 location under demand to have a camera. And the Amherst Railway Society people know the great folks at Union Station. We decorated their Christmas tree. We do a lot of work with them. So we were able to get a virtual railfan camera in there, and it's live now. So it's cool. And when you look at some of the pictures, you go, oh my God, it looks like a model railroad. It's just at the right height. I thought I was looking at someone's railroad when somebody sent me the first picture. So it was cool. So Thursday, we let all the layouts and folks with special permission come in and set up early. I've got several folks, guys, that have heart conditions. They can't deal with the crowds. A couple folks that are in wheelchairs, all exhibitors, of course. I let them come in Thursday. I have no problem with that, as long as they know to come in the afternoon, because we're still surveying and stuff. So it's that kind of thing. All tables have to be in place before we leave 11 p.m. And I've stayed after midnight on Thursday on occasion. Because Friday in red is my worst day. Okay. We're all set up. Everything is there. I always take a photo of the place when I first arrive. This is like a Wednesday morning photo when I park inside for a little bit. But Friday's my worst day because people never realize where they are until they get there. And I go, this location has been online and loaded into the database since December 1st. And they go, oh, I didn't realize this is where I was going to be this year. And so I will honestly try to move people around that day if I can. But it teaches them that they need to pay attention a little bit more, especially when there's, I send out 500 contracts. I probably get 450, 460 exhibitors each year, guys. And I've got a fast film for 1 minute and 15 seconds that shows you the setup on stop motion. We'll play that in a sec, just so this will flow a little bit easier. So on Friday evening, when everything is set up, we do what's called the Commonwealth Walk. And it takes us an hour and a half. I'm not out of there on Friday night until after midnight sometimes. But the Commonwealth Walk, it was named after, one of our guys named it, one of the conductors on, it was actually Ernie Strong's kid. Ryan Strong named it the Commonwealth Walk. We walk every single aisle in every single building. And we peek underneath the tablecloths to see what's new and all that kind of stuff. But we make sure all the aisles are done. I make notes about this trash can has to be moved. The guy has a couple of things in the aisle, all that kind of stuff. We make sure we're good for the opening. We also look around and make sure there's any notes that I have to let the fire marshal know about, any questions, because he won't offer the CO until he walks through all the buildings. There's actually a couple of them that do it, and they stay. They stay for the entire show. We have 5 fire marshals there. And by the way, there's also 5 plainclothes tax people there on Saturday. They don't come on Sunday, but they're there to make sure people that are selling have Massachusetts state tax numbers and stuff. And that's another ordeal in itself. But we don't have to worry about that. They take good care of us. We provide them with everything they need well in advance, so it works out well. So Saturday, just horsing around, we have a pool for attendance. And then that night, of course, there's a banquet for exhibitors and volunteers at the Stortown Village Carriage House in the evening. And we get about 110, 120 people for that, guys. It's really there for our volunteers and for the people that don't want to fight the traffic. And all we care about is breaking even on that, which we do every year. So it's good. Sunday, pool for attendance. And honestly, as soon as we blow that opening horn on Saturday morning, guys, the show takes on a life of its own. I actually breathe a sigh of relief because there's nothing I can do now. except react to some accidents or a couple like things like that, and go from there. And then we'll raffle the winner off. In the past, we used to have you guys present your awards at the show. And we would still do that if you ever wanted to do that. We feel the Mass Bay and we are great partners in a lot of things, and it's very much appreciated. So breakdown at Friday, the last hour of the day is to try to keep people from packing up early, because people that pay to come to the show, they want full access at the show. That's a tough nut to crack, guys. I can never get people from stopping as much as I try. And so what's funny about this, it takes 3 days to set up the show. By 8 o'clock at night, everybody's gone. It takes 3 hours to break down. So 3 days, 3 hours. And this is not kickboxing. This is box kicking. So we have a crew after everybody's gone, and the Boy Scouts come back and they fold up all the tables and lean them up against the posts, and we go box kicking. And we go looking, and every single year, without fail, we find stuff. One year it was huge. It was a whole crate of engines from one of the hobbies. I can't. The name is escaping me, unfortunately. But down by the shore in Brantford Hobbies. Thanks. So it was a whole case of locomotives, and I called him, and he goes, "Oh my God!" I said, "They're all here, 24 of them." And I shipped them down to them, and anything else we'll find if we can identify it. I'll even broadcast that we have it in the area of where we found it, and there's a lot of lost and found. We'll broadcast as well. I hit the hay. I am exhausted, guys. I scare myself driving home Sunday night, but we're not done. We come back the following Monday morning, breakfast at Memos, and we stay. I make sure all the giant pallets from all the major manufacturers are loaded up. So I stay with the folks at the Big E, make sure they're all sent out and all that kind of stuff. I pack our container. We have a 40-foot container on the grounds of the Big E that they let us keep there for all the stuff that, the show numbers and extra things, the kids layouts, the Brio layouts that are at the show. So we're usually done by 1 o'clock, and it's back to Memos for lunch, for the last bill. Is on Monday, and we love Memos because they have great food if you've ever been. So Wednesday, the following Wednesday, it's Monday. 2 days later, it's the hits and misses meeting. Here we go again, and it starts all over again, guys. So we hope the results are record-breaking attendance, record-breaking sales for exhibitors. I've never had a year where at least 4 or 5 exhibitors have said to me, "I had my best year ever." And I don't know if that'll ever end. I hope it doesn't. So we love all of that stuff. There's new product release, new innovations. It's great PR. Guys, we make over 6 figures in revenue. Okay, so after all of those expenses, we still make over 100 grand. So that goes to, and you could split this up in quarters. A quarter of it goes to our grant program. A quarter of it goes to our operating expenses to run our headquarters building, and member programs. We help fund the belt lines when they go away to shows and other programs, clinics, and all that kind of stuff. And then we try to put a little bit away for the following year to have some in reserve. So if you figure 25, 25, 25, 25, that's about right. Okay. So people say, what do you do with all the extra money? There's not that much extra money. We give it away. So after running our own building and saving a little bit in case we get in a jam, thank God, for when we had COVID, we give it all away. People don't get that. They think we're rolling in it. Well, we are for about 2 weeks, and then we give it all away. So it's cool. And it's a warm and fuzzy feeling when you give a $10,000, you guys know, when you give a $10,000 grant to someone who's trying to restore a roundhouse or a turntable or replace all the track and look park. It's a great feeling. So we have a lot of that stuff. So before I take questions, it is the end, but let me just get out of this. So I just have to pause sharing, guys. So let me just stop for just a second, go back to that 1 minute video.
John, before you show the video, let me just remind people that if you have any questions that you'd like to have asked of John during the official program, type them in on the Q&A. Right now, we don't have any questions on the Q&A. But and then of course people can stick around and ask questions after the formal program's over. But if you got something you'd really like to have answered while all the rest of the world can see it, or it'll be on the recording,
no question.
Get it packed in there now.
Okay, so let me just go to that, and let me just shorten this just for a second so I could share the screen again, guys. And now let me go to big screen. And this was taken a few years back. I tried to get myself in the picture, but it was like that episode in Star Trek, you know, with the expanded time, the fast time. You have to stand there for like 10 minutes in order for you to show up. So it was that kind of thing. But let me play that video right now. So there you go. So this is, as we're still setting up tables, the building has been surveyed at this point, and you can see the belt lines comes in early. But if you remember the old Quabog O-scale layout, that's what that red curtain layout was. They retired, and then we're setting up tables. That big open space to the left side of the screen is where the end track guys set up with that huge N scale layout. But that's how it runs. We're about halfway through the setup now. And if you look, you can see flashes of people in places, and then you'll notice people moving the tables around, which is okay with us as long as you have permission and you don't block any of the aisle space. Because the only problem we have is blocking the aisle space and sharing with the people behind you. As long as you guys get along with the people behind you and you share that space, we're happy. If someone complains, we step in and we fix it. And then there are no complaints. Otherwise, the dreaded DNIB. So that now you'll watch, the Big E actually has motion activated LED lighting now. So it was partially installed here. So some of the lights will go out and it gets dark. And there you have it, guys. That was the video. We just had a camera run all day. I think it was taking one frame every 10 seconds for that video. And that's been around. So some of you may have seen that before. So I'm ready for questions.
Okay, well, gee, we don't have any questions on the Q&A. Unless our panel has any questions.
And guys, I'm fine. You don't have to, I'm not going to feel bad if you don't have questions.
Well,
so don't worry about it.
I think I'll just, you talked about getting yourself in that time lapse, and I'll just share an amusing story. Back when I was in college, a group of us architecture students had designed and built a student lounge with a lot of sort of flexible modular furniture, think kindergarten blocks. And I borrowed a time-lapse camera from the famous Doc Edgerton and mounted it up near the ceiling of this room and this was a movie camera back in the day. And did this whole time-lapse thing of people coming in and moving stuff around and whatever. And so I was watching the film later on, and everything is just scurrying around just like your video. And all of a sudden, there's a guy walks in at normal speed and sits down and opens a book and closes the book and walks out. And I thought, what? And I realized it was the guy who lived across the hall from me in the dorm. And he knew I was doing a time-lapse video. And so he spent half an hour stop motioning himself. So anyway, that's my funny little story.
Oh, that's cool.
So since we don't have any typed in questions, I think what I'm going to do at this point, we do have a question. Okay. Reg Mitchell asks, you mentioned the big cash collection process. How much of a problem is crime otherwise? Oh, that's a good question. We've never, knock on wood, guys, we've never had a problem with the collection. But we have a lot of members that are retired state cops. And so some of them are with, you can't carry firearms on the Big E property by contract without permission. At the Big E, the people that have permission are state police and FBI agents. And you should know that there are FBI agents for the purposes of terrorism
at the Big E, a ton of them undercover. And we, believe it or not, have a few at our show because of the size. We're not the only one, so it's not just us. But whenever a show is of a certain size, it mandates undercover people. So we've never had a problem with money, and it's getting better because there's less cash around. But we have every year problems with shoplifting, and not so much, but a couple of cases. And in cases where they're caught red-handed, the one story I can tell you, they brought the person into my office, which is in the BLC, and they found the goods, and they brought the person over who owned the goods, and he didn't pay for them, and they said, "Do you want us to walk him out the back door?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Walk him right out the front door, so everybody could see." And you need to set examples. And it's not that crazy. There's an anecdote from many years ago when I was the assistant show director, where a brass locomotive showed up on another table in another building. A guy had reported it stolen, and then he walked around and he found it. And so we intervened, and the guy had it, said he bought it off of a guy, and we said, "Give us an identifying factor." He says, "Turn it upside down. My initials are scribed in it." And sure enough, they were. So we handed the solution was we handed the brass locomotive back to the original owner, and we said, "You guys work it out. It's stolen property. He's the rightful owner. If you don't believe that's true, call the police." And we said, "Or would you like us to call the police?" So they're few and far between. I had one other instance in the last 10 years where we contacted the police. So I know it happens, and we try to stop it. And there are Big E security undercover. It makes it sound so dramatic. Plain clothes. There's security people from the Big E with plain clothes. At night, I never worry because the buildings are locked very promptly. And the third shift guy, if we get the right guy, has dogs, and I don't stay when those dogs are there. He's got a giant Rottweiler and a Doberman, and they're trained. And he said, "I prefer that you guys leave." And I said, "I prefer it too." So yeah, there's a little bit of shoplifting, to be totally frank with you, but we do everything we can to make it happen, make it not happen, and we've been doing pretty well with it. So people, we actually offer, a lot of people don't realize this, but we have a service called Bio Break. And if you're the only one at your booth, guys, you can't even take time to relieve yourself. The guy who was running the train the first year had to run back in the back of Mallory before it was totally cleaned out for us because we needed so much space. They used to keep dirt back there to lay over the floors for the chickens and all that kind of stuff. He had to relieve himself back in the dirt pile. I said, "Why didn't you call us? We have Bio Break service. Our floor manager will come and watch your stuff while you go to the bathroom." So it's silly stuff, but we have had to come up with this. But we also have rooms for autistic kids, where they need a break from the crowds and the quiet. We have a breastfeeding room. A lot of people go, "What?" Yeah, these things are all from our own learning process. So there's a lot of things that go on that no one realizes we do. But if you look at the website, we actually have autistic kids and Asperger's kids come in on Friday, where the crowds aren't big and they're not so overwhelmed with the crowds, and they'll be there. So a lot of stuff like that. But as far as crime, I'm happy to say there's not that much.
Great. So I have a confession to make. I forgot to press record on the meeting. So I'm not sure whether I can pull it off of Facebook later. So it may not appear probably won't appear on YouTube later.